Morning, we'll call the meeting to order for the day. First item on our agenda is approval of today's agenda.
So move.
Mr. Chair, we have additions.
Plus additions.
Plus the additions, okay.
Second with the additions and deletion.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda with additions. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Citizens to be heard. Any citizens that would like to be heard? Yes, please step up to the mic, sir. Good morning.
Morning. Well, it's been kind of a long thing, you know, we've been trying to work out with the county, but it doesn't seem to get very far, so I just need a few questions answered if I could. Does the county receive National Resource Block grants?
Yeah, can you give your name and your address? please,
Brian
sir?
Brunette.
And your
I
address.
live on Lake 15,
Okay.
Clay County.
Thank you.
Does the county receive National Resource Block grants? Natural Resource Block grant. Does the county receive them?
Does the county receive, yes, I believe we do, yes,
Is that for all citizens of Clay County?
certainly.
Is stormwater management for all citizens of Clay County?
Certainly.
Well, since 2016, we've been told it's just for the urban area. And we brought that law in, and I believe it was fall of 2016, gave it to Tim Magnuson, and he had no idea what it was, and it's in your ordinance. So in February of 17, Jenny, who is, I can't remember her last name, said that, you know, she rewrote the law, and it just pertains to people in the urban area. And I've been to meetings here, and it's been said on the meetings, it's on the recording. We've had our land out there. We live on a SP, Natural Environmental Lake, that's special protection. And the county has allowed people to clear cut the land, stormwater runoff. It's only 100 feet from the lake, and this thing has been pouring water into private people's property, and the county does nothing about it. We've had so many meetings, and so we've been, how is stormwater management not for us? And what can we do about this big problem of the permitting process the county does? My neighbor, he's got a permit that was approved by all lot 6, I won't say names, in the subdivision. And all that's on that permit, there's no elevations, and it says 36 by 42 building. That's it. Nothing else on that. And then you gave him a variance from 2001 and 2018. He can use the same variance. If I could please I'll send something in next meeting to see how much, is that block grant in the millions?
Well, if you have some more information, I know we've been dealing with this with you for a number of years now, and so, you know, I'm not sure exactly where we're at with this situation right now, but we can look into it. We'll have the county administrator, Mr. Larson, you know, take a further look for you. So, and if you have additional information, you know, you can provide that. So.
Would board members like to have a meeting out there so we can show you what the devastation of what's happened there? Because really it's a training site for what not to do. I've been in construction 40 years. I fell off the Radisson in 1985, head first, 32 feet, hit a concrete block, and I still made it 25 years working after I got back on my feet again. And I've been put in the grave. We've been targeted. My wife and I, we've been in and out of court for 2 years for nothing. We're in court now, aren't we, Anthony?
We
For
are.
nothing?
I wouldn't say it's for nothing, but we are in court now, yes.
Because I touched the neighbor's fence?
We're not gonna get into that today.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
why don't
another day.
you can have some contact with Mr. Larson, and we'll see if there's anything additional that we can do for you. And if you're already in, you know, in court proceedings, then, you know, that'll...
No, that's
have
has nothing to do with
Commissioner
the...
Campbell?
Yeah, I think, you know, as our board chair said, you've been here a number of times. I think the best thing for you to do, don't walk in here 5 minutes before a meeting and expect detailed answers on some things that take some research. Submit your questions to us ahead of time. We'll give you the answers you're looking for. But
Well,
you
my
can't
main
expect
question
everybody...
is stormwater management.
Yeah, well...
It's a mess.
Yeah, well, the stormwater management is not, it's not something very simple to answer. And we have stormwater management plans, but you might not like the results. It doesn't mean that they're not there.
Well, it says it's just for the urban area. The county has nothing to do with the urban area, do they, for permitting?
Well, why don't we try, you know, we understand that's your question, and like I said, you can,
I
you know...
mean, shoreland management?
We'll see if we can
There's
get your
nothing.
question answered for you, so...
Yeah, shoreline
Okay.
management is defined in our codes.
How come it's not adapted and governed?
That's
When you
That's your
came to this
interpretation.
board a year ago, we were very clear and we went through detailed answers to all of your questions when I was the board chair. And I believe it was Commissioner Whalen that said we'd be more than happy to look into any additional issue or new issue that comes up. And if you'd like to reach out to our administrator and have further clarification on issues that may be new, we'd be happy to work with you on that.
There's no new issues, it's the old issues that were never policed and never governed. You cannot send stormwater and destruct the whole neighborhood because of the inadequate permitting and policing of these laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Burnett, for your time. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of payment of bills and vouchers.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second to pay the bills and vouchers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approval of minutes from the March 12th and 19th, 2019 meetings. Oh, yeah, let's do that. I'll go back to that.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes from March 12th and 19th, 2019. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Yeah, I neglected, are there any other citizens that would like to be heard that are in the audience? Please, yeah, sorry.
I'm here to address, my name is Eric Smith, I live here in Moorhead. I'm here to address the cell phone policy, and I know that we've covered this before, but a recent decision came out the day after the last time I was here, Timms versus Indiana, which means the Bill of Rights applies to the states. Now, I have read the electronics in the courtroom procedures that the judges have decided to make present to all of us. However, please be aware that this does violate due process rights, and it does violate freedom of speech rights as well. I do have recordings that I have made between myself and my child's mother in our custody case, which because of this policy has violated my due process rights, to be able to use this as evidence when the child of my mother's child or whatever, when she calls and she makes threats to me and I record it, I'm recording it on a whim right on my cell phone right then and there so that I have evidence to use. Now, when I want to bring that into the courtroom is saying, they're saying, no, you can't bring it in. Well, you're violating my due process rights and my right to make a case before that judge. Now, in a policy, it's saying that self-represented litigants are allowed to have cell phones in the courtrooms. I'm self-represented, but at the same time, they're telling me that I cannot use video or audio unless I get it approved by the presiding judge. Well, if that judge isn't the presiding judge, then I can't use it. And my big problem with this is that we have judges going rogue, just doing whatever they want, making whatever policies This is a public entity paid for by the public taxpayers. Their job is to come in, enforce the law, hear the cases, not to make policies. That's not up to them. That is not their job. That is up to the county courthouse to make the policies, not the judges. They can say, well, we can do whatever we want, and that's what most, let's just be honest, that's what most judges do. This is what we're going to do. If it violates your rights, who cares? That's what a lot of judges do. But it doesn't make it okay. And it doesn't change the fact that it violates due process and the First Amendment rights that we have in this country. It doesn't change that. And that supersedes what this piece of paper here has to say. And I want it changed, and I would like the county board to sit down and talk with the judges and say, hey, look, you can't do this. We need to have some reasonable policy in effect to where if somebody brings their cell phone in and they want to use it for evidence to play during a hearing, that they can do so. But they cannot be talking on the phone, obviously, and if they're talking on the phone, then they get thrown out, or they get told not to do it again, and if they do it again, they're not allowed to come back in the courtroom with the cell phone again, period. Some kind of warning system. That's fair. The Constitution is exactly what it says. The Supreme Court has made it very, 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 very clear. This was incorporated back in the 1940s, and we're still litigating the Bill of Rights in 2019? Are you kidding me?
Well, look, Mr. Smith, we're certainly not attorneys here, and it sounds like your issue is with, we don't control the courts here, or the judges, and it sounds like your issue is a legal issue, and I would suggest that you have legal representation of your own to address that issue with the courts.
That would mean
Because
taking
there's
the county
nothing
into court and suing the county
Well,
for a
there's nothing that
violation.
the county board can do to address your issue when it involves rulings by judges in terms of
That, once again, it's a public entity. The county has the right to run the courthouse. The only job the judges have is to come in here, do their job, rule on the evidence, go based on the word of law. That's it. They are not to be setting policies, running rogue. That's not what we have them here for.
Well, we understand your position, but like I said, I think that this is an issue that you have to deal with the courts. And
So we're going to let them run rogue and say it's okay, right?
Well, I'm
So
not
we're
sure- I'm not
just
sure
going to let
that's how
them
I
run
would-
rogue. They can do what
I'm
they
not sure that
want.
would be my description of it, but.
No big deal.
But the county board is not going to make address that issue here today, so.
I think it's wrong.
Okay.
I think it's 100% wrong. We need to address this issue. We're starting to take rights away from people now. I don't understand how that works. Can you please explain how that works to me, please?
Well, like I said, your issue sounds like it's with the ruling that the judges
In a county courthouse.
in the county
It's
courthouse.
paid for by the public taxpayers,
They've issued
correct?
that ruling, and so that's what, we're obligated to abide by that
It
also.
doesn't change the fact that the public pays for the courthouse.
Okay, well,
It doesn't change the fact that they can run rogue, does it? It's a question.
And we don't determine
Yeah.
what judges decide is legitimate evidence or not that they bring within their courtroom. That's not for the county board to decide.
It is for the county board,
No, it
because
is
it's
not.
paid for,
No, it
it's
is
paid
not
for
for the
by the
county
county,
board.
it's paid for by public
It is
taxpayers.
not for the county board
It
to
doesn't
decide.
matter, it's paid for by public taxpayers. We can have this argument all day long.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's paid for by the public
I think you just
taxpayers.
hit the nail on the
It's
head.
not up for-
We could argue this all day long, but like I said, the county board is not in a position to address that issue for you, and so, our suggestion to you is that, you have representation and bring that before the court where your issue is and let them resolve it for you, so.
Well, the Supreme
And that's
Court
what
just
we
came
would-
out. I don't
Well,
understand why we're
like I
sitting
say,
here
it's a court issue,
going
so-
against what the Supreme
but
Court just said.
Thank you for your time, so. Any other citizens that would like to be heard today on any item that is not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Presentation of market study. Tessa Melvin. Darren.
There's one thing request I wanted to make at the township meeting. They said that when they pick it up on TV, we're not coming through very good, so we should be using our microphones better and stuff.
Okay, well, we'll certainly try that. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us today. This is a Tessa. She is with David Drown Associate, doctor, I guess we should say. And she's going to go over what the market study we're looking at doing here this year. I gave you some handouts as well, but we also have some slides. And she'll probably take up most of the 30 minutes, so I'm just going to go ahead and let her do that.
Good morning, Tess.
Morning, thank you for having me. Today I'm here just to kind of go over who David Drown is, our project scope that we propose, expectations, timeline, next steps, and then answer any questions. So David Drowns has been around for nearly 20 years working with cities and counties in Minnesota. He started the company on the finance side of it, doing economic development, bond sales, and TIF districting. And then our clients came to us in 2013 and said, hey, we really need help in human resources. Can you expand your business? So we've been expanding to do organizational studies, executive recruitments, classification and compensation, and then we also staff the HR call center for the Association of Minnesota Counties. So when an HR county person calls in, they're talking to one of our staff members. We're a little bit different than most consultants. We all are former city or county administrators, which I think is beneficial because we provide practical solutions for cities and counties, and we just know the role of an administrator, we know the role of the board, and we have also been staff, so we understand those expectations as well. Our mission is to provide quality advice with a simple focus on you, our client. It sounds cheesy, but it really is what we do. We work in rural Minnesota, and what we do in Clay County is going to be different than another county because you're different. You have different services, you provide different levels of service, and you have different expectations. And we want to make sure what we're giving you fits for the board and the employees. I am Tessa Melvin. I lead this area. I have 15 years of city and county government experience, former city administrator, and I have a doctorate from Hamline University. Our team is Gary Wires, he's a former Rice County administrator, Greg Mangold, Carver County, George Gamak has been doing classification and compensation for 30 years, Elizabeth is one of our office managers, and then David Drown is the president and also does our data analysis. So background for Clay County, your last study was done in 2008, 2009. You currently have a classification system with 32 grades. So a grade is basically saying as a job, I'm awarded this many points and it puts me in a grade. Because of that grade, I have a min and a max of my pay range. I might have the same as Darren's, we might have different jobs, but we might be in the same grade. So it's a way of identifying the position, the worth, and the wage range based on what that job is expected to do. You have some unions. We want to make sure that we understand those and we work with you in that process. And currently there isn't an identified pay philosophy, so no formal or informal statement of where does the board want to pay in relation to the market. So that's something that we'll talk with the board when we have preliminary results to say is here's where the market is, where do you want to be, where can you be based on tax capacity, tax rates, and those type of things. And the other issue that the county is having is supervisory promotion. So when I'm a staff person and I get promoted, is that increase large enough or is it compressed? So my now direct reports might be making very similar to what I am. So should we look at that a little bit more? So the goals of a compensation system is to have competitive wages and benefits for your employees. They're your greatest asset. To be compliant with pay equity. So every 3 years, Clay County has to complete a pay equity report. And that basically says, these are the job positions at Clay County. Here's how many men we have in them. Here's how many females. And here's what we pay that position. If you fail to do the report or fail to comply with it, you could lose your government program aid money, which is something that you rely on heavily. So we want to make sure that we're compliant with that. The other part is balancing compensation benefits with other resources, so that total compensation package for an employee. And then we want to make sure that the study appears to be open and fair to employees, managers, and unions. So when we do this, we want to make sure what we're communicating is transparent. So why do you do a study? Generally because there's gradual changes in duties performed. So we want to look at the jobs, Darren has updated and worked with management to update job descriptions. There are changes in organizational relationships or responsibilities that may have happened since the last study. You might have recruitment and retention problems. We know that public health is one of your concerns. That is something we're seeing statewide, but we want to make sure we look at that. And then that statutory compliance to make sure you're compliant with the pay equity report. So the scope of this project is you currently have 136 positions in the county, so those are job positions, not employees. We want to look at a market analysis and to provide preliminary results, discuss that pay philosophy, and then provide suggested changes in the pay structure and a final report to the board. So the process, I had initial meeting to learn more about Clay County, its current situation, and future concerns. I met with the Personnel Issues Committee prior to this meeting to kind of go into a little bit more detail level. Another piece of that is communicating what works for the culture here at Clay County. We're happy to come out and do employee meetings. We're happy to have management meetings, interview employees if there's a job area that we need to focus a little bit more on, and then providing unique and customized results for Clay County, and then creating that preliminary results in the final report. Before you, we have a graph I just wanted to show, and it's not Clay County information, but there are some graphs. Basically what I wanted to show you there is that the data that we do, we provide it in the report multiple ways. Some people are very visual, so they want the graphs. They want to see where the mins, the maxes are of the benchmark, where you fit. We also provide it statistically. If you want to say this position is within 95% of the market, the min is, but maybe the max is 80%. We provide it that way too. Another graph that we use is our graph fit chart, where we line up the benchmark positions and we say, here is a deputy and here's where all the benchmarks are, and one dot is where you're currently paying. So you can see within that, because when you look at jobs, tenure is hard to account for because you don't know everyone's tenure, average it out. The other issue is benchmark communities. While we look at all the jobs, all the wages of your benchmark communities, we want to have benchmark jobs that are similar, or what we would say more apples to apples from county to county, because we use that to help us start calibrating that pay structure. So we'll have the board approve at some point, I think maybe the next one, the benchmark communities and jobs. The reason I do that is I don't want any questions when I'm done with my report to say, hey, why didn't you think of X, Y, and Z? I want it to be transparent. I know that the management group is also going to look at it, so we want any input from them as well. We want to make sure it's consistent with union practices. And our benchmark communities that we chose, that you'll be looking at based on county services, your tax capacity, your tax rate, your region, and then just the service level that you provide in comparison to other counties. So you'll see some counties that might not be regionally close, but they mimic you enough where we think that would be a good way to do it. And then the PIC group also looked at those, and I know Darren and I are having some conversations based on that conversation to update the benchmark jobs. So that'll come before you at your next board meeting to formally approve. Does that make sense so far? Okay, that's a lot. I feel like I'm talking a lot, so stop me. Pitfalls to avoid, or what I say is why people avoid doing classification and compensation studies. The biggest one is a transparency. We want the board to approve those benchmark jobs in communities so everyone knows this is who we're comparing to. It's past practice. This is why we've chosen them. And make sure that we're communicating anything that we can in an open way and that best serves Clay County. The communication to employees is huge, to say we're doing this. Also for employees to know the board is actually investing in them. They're doing this study to make sure they are being competitive, and we want to make sure that employees know that, and if they have questions, we can answer that. The implementation is, we want to make sure it's aligned to your union strategy, but we also want to make sure when do we implement. So we might have results very soon, but you might not see a final report till later because you have union negotiations to go through, and we have a process that has to go. And then finally, we want to make sure your final report looks how you want and answers the questions you have. So we are able to overlay specific entities, like if you said, you know what, Moorhead is very close and we lose some employees there, we want to specifically overlay how they're paying certain areas and see where we compare. We can do that both with a graph and statistics. So we can do it multiple ways to get questions answered or to provide data. So things to consider is that while we look at all jobs and positions at the county, the benchmark jobs, again, are those that are most similar, and those will be approved by the board. How we deliver the report is basically a union strategy or board decision is when do you want the information to become public. So our data is our data until you're ready to release it or have those negotiation conversations. And then the one question that to consider for future is, do you want to continue using your classification system? So your current system really looks at job positions by what they call a decision band method. So it says, in this position, it's classified this, so it should be paid this way. Our system looks at the position and looks at everything from education, requirements for the job, like certifications. It looks at problem solving, how it impacts the employee, the division, the department, and the overall. It looks at the budget impact. It looks at decision making. So who do my decisions impact? Is it just my work? Is it clients? Is it the county? And we look at relationships. So what communications are you relaying? Is it just general information? Here's basic instructions. Are you trying to get a client or someone to change their behavior? That type of thing. And then we look at hazards and the work environment. So it's very specific to the job description, which we think is important, and Darren has done a good job of keeping those up to date, which is huge because when you go out for repostings, you want those to be updated, and it also should be up to date when you do your performance evaluations. So you guys have been doing a really good job there. We just want to kind of look at, is your current system maybe looking at them the way they should be? So big question I always get is, why do we hire a compensation consultant? Darren's very smart. He could do all of this. Well, one, all counties hire this outside because this is all we do. So we're your subject matter expert. There's a time factor. If you want this done in a timely manner, you would have to lock up Darren and shut off his phone so he could only focus on this. And we have experience. So right now, I think we are in 14 counties doing classification studies of some sort or ongoing maintenance. Objectivity, when I look at a job position, I strictly look at the job description. While all employees are amazing and wonderful, I look at it as if everyone were to win the lottery and this is what we have to hire for tomorrow. So I don't have any notions of who employees are. There's a cost benefit of having us do it. We have proprietary information as well, and then our availability to get it done in a timely manner. The next steps would be for the board to approve jobs and communities, which will come to your next meeting. We'll do the market analysis, come back with some preliminary results, and have that final report for you to then act on. So recommendations we would have is to have that conversation about the evaluation tool. Is it doing what we think it should be doing? Do you want to change? An ongoing maintenance plan. What that is right now 6 of our clients have said we don't ever want to go through one of these studies again. They're painful. There's usually a cost because they haven't been done in a while. So what they said is we just want to work with you on an ongoing maintenance to keep our job descriptions up to date, to look at them every year, the market, how it's moving, and to make sure our pay structure is moving along with it, and then to look at benefits. Generally, we see a 3-year cycle because most labor contracts are 3 years, so we could do the job descriptions a third, and a third, look at the market, provide that. That way you're constantly moving with the market. Very similar to your highway maintenance would do a pavement improvement plan. You look at pieces you can continually do to improve it and keep it going. Mm-hmm. Your human capital is your greatest asset and your greatest expense too. So we want to make sure that we don't have large gaps along the way. And then whatever we do, we want to make sure you have a pay philosophy that fits with your tax capacity, your tax rate, and then align anything with the union negotiations. Questions?
Any questions?
Have you ever done a study where it came out that the standard pay was too high?
Yep. We actually, I mean, we generally see, you'll have some employees that might be what you would say is maybe over market or above market. And that might just be because of tenure, it might be because it was reclassed wrong or whatever. So then we come back and say pay philosophy is how do you want to deal with those situations? Sometimes you can say we're going to freeze them completely until the market catches up to them. You could continue doing a market adjustment of some sort. I've never seen someone take money away. And I wouldn't recommend that because you don't know why they got to where they did. But we do see that sometimes. But then on the other end, we see ones that are below market. But that would, we would come back to the board and say, out of all your employees, you maybe have 10 employees that are what you would consider above market. Here's some justifications, tenure, might be part of that, and how do you want to resolve that?
One other question I have, what about, you ever look at the status of the county? Say the county doesn't, we have to increase the mill levy 2, 3% or 4%
Yes.
to justify this study. I mean, do you look at the financial status of the county?
Yes, so that's part of who we benchmark is based on your tax capacity and your tax rate. And the other thing that we do is when we do budget implementation, we'll give you several options. One would be to get you right at the market, budget you can afford, but then we'll break it down. We've had some clients that said, we can't afford this, we need to do a 3-year implementation. Here's what the cost looks like at year 1, year 2, year 3. As an employee, I know that you're invested in me, you're willing to make up that gap. I think that's a pretty good thing. I also know as a former administrator, you only get money from taxes, that's your revenue. So if there's no money there, we can't pay more. But what do we do? Well, how do we address those issues? And how do we get some of them that might be really low up there when we have some that are really high? So we want to make sure we're creating a pay structure that's equitable externally so we can keep and recruit, but internally too so we're paying fairly.
I know I like all this, what you're talking about here. I know there's times when market conditions, we in the past, we've had a tendency to only compare ourselves to other counties. We found here in Clay County, being a border city with Fargo and Cass County, that by doing that, we can find ourselves on the low end or not even getting applicants because of, but it can go the other way as well. Sometimes if you compare yourself to just other counties and not with the private sector, you can also go the other way. So I think we've talked about now where we are incorporating some review because of our location with Fargo and Cass, right? That's going to be
Yep, they're included, and we,
Okay.
one of our clients is East Grand Forks, so we did something very similar with Grand Forks where we overlaid where their pay structure was. And they were very similar through their whole thing, and maybe their department heads were higher. They don't have the governor's cap like we have, and they have different income taxing and stuff like that. So we'll be able to do that, and we think it's good because they are a competitor, and you probably have several employees that drive in, so we want to make sure we are paying fairly. To your point, though, to what we can pay. There are some times where this is all we can do. Maybe we have to increase benefits or look at total compensation, but definitely something you want to look at. And I know your detox center is very unique. And we have some private entities that we'll be including in as well, because not many counties have it. It's even with the juvenile facility. If I look at your benchmark ones, very few, so we might have to go outside that benchmark to make sure we're really looking at apples to apples.
You mentioned the 136 positions. On page 3 of this document, it's
Yep.
listed as page 3. You have a list across the bottom. Are these samples of those
That's a
positions?
sample of another county, and that,
But-
yep, and that's benchmark, so that will show you kind of a little bit more information.
Right.
But those are benchmark positions that we generally see
Okay.
from county to county to county. Because again, if you benchmark all of them, we'll have graphs, but some of them you're gonna have little information because you have jobs that are just very unique here.
Do you benchmark all 136?
We benchmark, I guess when I say benchmark, I look at the job descriptions and be able to say what education requirements are required of that, how big is their department, how many do they supervise. We do a wage analysis for all positions. So all the positions will be included. But this is what you would see for benchmark jobs, and what this does is the red dot would be you, and the black dots would be your benchmark, but it tells you in general. Now, this is not Clay County information, so if anyone takes pictures, it's not you. But I wanted to show, because sometimes people are like, well, how is this gonna come back to us? How will we be able to make decisions? And I find that this fit graph chart tells me, for example, if I'm a property technician and I'm always complaining about my pay, actually you're above the market by a bunch. So we may have to freeze you or just give you a part of the market adjustment until the market catches up. But we have some individuals that are below the market, we would need to address those sooner.
Okay, so if I can continue, so.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned then that there's a 3-year time period, so you don't want it, so you're gonna, these things would be relooked at, each area would be relooked at every 3 years, is that?
That would be if you did an ongoing maintenance. So generally what happens in your last instance, you did one in 2008 and it got implemented in 2009. Very painful, and it got kind of set on the shelf for 10 years. So now we're back at 2019. We don't want you to do that because one, there are wage gaps, and what happened in 2008 in the industry is probably very different than what it did now. There was the recession, and sometimes jobs were going to be really low, and now they're kind of going back up. So we think if you look at the market every year, we're able to provide you a quick snapshot to say, hey, based on your communities, you're going to need to adjust your pay structure by X. And based on that, this one job is really out of line because sheriff, for instance, they're having a hard time recruiting right now based on the things that are going on. So their jobs are fluctuating right now, and that might be one that we need to address. I know the assistant county attorneys in the state right now, that's the one we're seeing also. It has been flat, now it's going up. So there's going to be maybe an increase on that one. But we're able to catch those sooner, so there's not a huge wage gap, and we're able to address those compression issues so they don't happen. Because now if we make adjustments from the last one, it's been 10 years. So Darren might have been here 10 years and I might just be starting. We might have a compression issue because it's been so long. So we find that if you do an ongoing maintenance where you're looking at it every year, the job descriptions are visited, the classifications, you don't have those, it's a smaller cost. Similar like you would do a pavement improvement, you go out and look at your surfaces every year to say, yep, that's a grade 7, that's a 7, oh, that's an 8, now it escalated, we need to do this. Very similar.
So
You
when
don't have to though.
So when you do, under the annual maintenance that you're talking about, do you do that before a cost of living adjustment is considered?
Yes, then we would be able to tell you, here's what your competitors are doing, and here's what we're seeing in the industry, here's what we would recommend, and we'd give you a budget implementation. So when you're doing the budget, you would know, okay, our total payroll is gonna go up X%, and we budgeted for it because Tessa kept us in line, and we don't have this wage adjustment. I've had some clients come in, and they're 14 to 15% wage gap. So that's a huge budget number for a board. And I've had some that are very little. So it's hard to tell, but the longer you wait, the more that can happen. The nice thing is that your job descriptions are up to date. I come in sometimes and I have job descriptions that still say typewriter, and they don't have computers on there. So they haven't been updated for a long time. That can be an issue of and of itself. So you're ahead of the market there. Now we just want to make sure we're paying what our competitors are or what we can afford. Because you're going to be different. Your pay philosophy is going to be different than the county next door. Because they might have more resources. They might not provide the same service level to their clients.
So can you provide us at some point, whether you do it through through the PIC or whatever, can you provide us what we'd be looking at budgeting for the annual maintenance
Oh, yeah,
part of
yep.
what you could do? Whether that would be done annually, or whether we would take a portion, a third,
Yep.
and do it every 3 years. I think it would be good for us to have that information so we can incorporate that. And then maybe we could cut Darren's salary by that amount, because he wouldn't have to do it.
I don't think so. I think he has enough other things to do.
Suggesting that in fact this morning.
Yeah, I think we'll find enough work for him to do.
And that does, like Tessa said, it's an additional cost as an ongoing maintenance. So I think that the two things that we would have to decide later on that would determine, do we want to go with this new evaluation system, which would be an additional cost, and then the ongoing maintenance as well.
When I was on PIC last year, was that we referred to, and actually when we chose this company, that they had, instead of having 4, they had 6 areas that they looked at. Is that what
Yeah.
we're
They have
talking
a little
about?
bit more detailed.
Is that what we're
Yeah.
talking about here?
Yeah, because
Okay.
right now you look at 4 areas, and it really what their system does, and we're trained in multiple classification systems, but they basically say, Darren is at this level, this is his classification. Before they even look at the job description, then they go into the job description to see if there's anything. When we look at it, we don't even look at the title, we just look at the job description and say, here's the education and experience needed or certificate needed, they get this many points. We look at the decision making, kind of how we said, how does it impact my work, the division, the department, the overall? Do I supervise? No, but I provide work direction. Okay, we're going to give you credit for that. How many people? Do I have budget implementations? Do my problem solving, how big is that? We look at the job description a lot more detail. So we find that when we go into a system that's been classified, you're probably going to have a handful of jobs that have just been misclassified, and that might be why the pay is low.
But you do look at the position title.
Yes, we do, but if you all wanted to be kings and queens of whatever, I don't care. At the end of the day, what I care about is that job description.
Yeah, my point why you would have to look at the title is because of the compression piece, wouldn't you?
Yes and no, because unfortunately, I could have a property appraiser here and a property appraiser at another county, and they might have different requirements. So that title doesn't always tell me, but the job description does. So the position title would maybe give me some inkling to supervisor and that piece, but to me, the job descriptions are more important because they tell me the essential duties of that job, what's expected, the abilities, skills, and knowledge that's required of that position, and then I can kind of go into it. Job descriptions or titles are important, but sometimes they don't always fit the best way. So that's where I caution people because that's the first thing I always get in when we read your job. I want to be, okay, great, but nothing has changed in your job description, so you're still here. So I just want to make sure that there isn't special words that if I am a coordinator versus a specialist, there's a different, not necessarily, because they're not consistent, so.
I was thinking more in the line of a lieutenant versus a sergeant.
Oh, that tells me
That's the
in
compression.
the law, yep. Or even in the attorney's office, chief,
Right.
assistant
Yeah.
chief.
So we know that's
Yeah.
the compression part.
Yeah, yep.
Frank, you had a question?
No, you said you look at job descriptions and stuff like that. Do you look at what they actually do too? I mean, you probably answered it somewhat already, but, I mean, I know you can have a job description. You're supposed to be doing this,
Yep.
this. But then if you look at the person, he's really not doing any of those things.
So unfortunately, that's Darren's issue, because that's
I mean, that's why I was
We
wondering.
tried to
We're
address that
hoping
though.
that we're hoping that the PDQ describes the job that's supposed to be being done.
Yeah.
Now,
So do I.
We've run into this before, where you have a job description, but you have this outstanding individual that's doing above and beyond what they're supposed to be doing on the job description, and then all of a sudden they should be, either higher grade, higher pay, whatever. So the job description, and that's why we went through the review, is that
Yeah.
take the people out of it. This is what we need this job to do. And you have underperformers, you have overperformers, but the job position should tell you what this position should be doing. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. Because I
So
know a
here's
lot
an
of people do
example
a lot
that-
more things.
That we see a lot as a jail programmer. They will sometimes be doing things above and beyond, like what Darren said, but they shouldn't be because they're not trained and they don't have the tools to do it, and that could be a liability for the county. So I'm not saying in Clay County, but
Right.
I see that a lot of times where, oh yeah, but I escort them here, here, and here, and I do this. Okay, well, you shouldn't be, because that's a huge liability to the county. You're not trained, and you don't have that ability, so that could be an issue. But if you and I have the same job description and you are hitting outside the ballpark all the time and I'm barely getting to first base, that's a performance issue, and that's Darren. He needs to address that.
I think the other,
looking at that.
I think the other thing is, and I've seen it already a little bit, is as soon as we said review your job positions or your PDQs, we're gonna do a wage study, then those PDQs all of a sudden got bigger. You know, I do all of these things too. So we have to look at some of that as, is this realistic?
Right.
Has this job changed this much in this?
I understand that, but I think that we have been diligent about keeping up with those, and so it's not like we had a huge onslaught of these that hadn't been done, so.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that helps out.
employees aren't rushing to add more to their, you know, what their paper says they're doing, and we all know that they're doing a lot more anyhow, but,
Yeah.
and then Frank, you're always hitting it out of the park, so you can't compare to you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Okay, so
Darren.
next board meeting, we'll have the finalized list of comparable counties, which I think we're pretty well with that already. And then we just have to look at a couple more positions for the benchmark, and I'll bring that to the board next week for approval.
Good.
Because we want to have that solidified before they launch on their
Yeah.
wage study.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to say, well, why didn't you consider this, you know, when we're all done with the.
Are we still on target for our time frame that we
Yes.
talked about?
August,
Oh.
by sure.
We'll have preliminaries really quick. But it might not be final, like a public report, because of labor, and that's where one.
Yep.
Sometimes employees are like, well, where are they? We can provide an update, but some of that has to remain as part of your labor negotiations, just because you have contracts coming up, so.
Good presentation, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Flood update. Good morning, Gabe.
Thanks for your work yesterday. You made the governor's Twitter page and Instagram page.
Well, thank you all for showing up, other than board chair was a little bit unable. I do appreciate you all coming yesterday, and actually it was nice to have a little chat with the governor afterwards and kind of touch base with him, so it's good to feel like we have his support. So, as far as flood update, yesterday Vice Chair Gross did sign a 72-hour state of emergency for Clay County. Today I would recommend that the county board pass a resolution declaring a state of emergency, and that would be good for 30 days. And if you have questions about that, I can kind of explain, or else Heather Winkleblack from HSEM can also kind of help explain the reasoning for that if need be. But I guess a couple of the things regarding that, it does streamline the process for acquiring flood-related goods and services. And kind of forego a lot of the bidding processes if we need heavy equipment, extra manpower, things like that. We can go ahead and line up contractors and whatnot if we need that stuff without doing that. And then the other thing is, once the county has exceeded its maybe resources and equipment and manpower or whatnot, it makes state resources much more readily available quicker. So.
I'd move it. I'm going to start it by moving the declaration of emergency for Clay County.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second declaring the emergency. Any further discussion?
No, Heather gave What's has the state threshold changed at all for?
It's probably a little different since last time. So Heather can probably touch base a little bit more, but there's two different thresholds right now. So there's a state threshold that the county can meet, and then also the federal threshold. And for Clay County, I think it's basically based off of population and whatnot. For Clay County, it's approximately $111,000 is the state threshold. That includes all of Clay County, so Moorhead, any of the other cities throughout Clay County. And the federal threshold is approximately double that for Clay County, so we're looking at probably like around $222,000. But then also the state of Minnesota would have to reach, I believe it's close to $8 million before the state of Minnesota would actually be in a disaster where the federal government would step in. So there's a couple different things that, Clay County would have to meet that 222, but the state also needs to reach that close to 8 million, which based off of the governor's briefing yesterday, it's pretty clear that almost the entire state of Minnesota is potentially looking at some flooding issues this year. So it's pretty unique for the state. It's not just our little neck of the woods here. So,
Have you instructed the townships to make sure that they keep track of all of their?
I did. There was actually the township, their annual meeting here a week ago, I believe it was.
Okay.
And I did talk to them. I'm going to reach out again. I'm trying to get a more comprehensive list of contact information. A lot of email addresses and whatnot are missing. But if any of you have contact with your township officials too, just let them know if they have questions or concerns about flooding issues. You can refer them to me, and I'll do the best I can to address them. But they were given, there's a FEMA 214 form is what it's called to document that information.
Okay.
So they were all given that, and it's a downloadable form, so anyone can go on actually FEMA's website and just type in FEMA forms, and you could download it. It's a fillable form, so, but they have been briefed on that.
Have you heard of any, I know that sometimes they can actually back up costs. For example, if there was a severe storm that had happened, let's just use the March 12th storm or whatever that date was of that severe storm that
A couple years ago?
No, I'm talking about
Yeah, the blizzard.
that dumped an awful lot of snow or ice, and counties then had a lot of extra expenditures dealing with that. I know that in the past that they've actually been able to backdate to that event being what triggered the disaster. Heather, are you familiar with that?
Yes, we did that. We had almost a month last summer for summer storms with the tornadoes, strong winds, rains that we had, and then flooding in southern Minnesota. Northwest Minnesota had the tornadoes and strong winds, and it was like middle of June to the middle of July that we had that, and so it went through and it was backdated because it was the same cycle that went through. For winter storms, it has to be a longer period of time than one storm that triggered it, because we had several storms through the winter, so the flooding, that would not occur for this.
Okay.
But if there is enough damage to infrastructure due to a storm, like on a roof collapse or something like that, then we can deal with each instance as it comes in, and we can go back and help you with that if we know, even if it was, from a month ago or 2 weeks ago, we can work with you.
Okay.
But you still have the state threshold, and then you pay the 25%, and then the state pays 75%.
Yeah, and that is a difference on, I guess, reimbursement. The state threshold is a different reimbursement rate than the federal. As far as the weather, things are looking pretty good for the at least immediate future as for the spring thaw. There hasn't been any really major river level updates or anything like that. Nothing's changed because the weather's been holding pretty steady. So if we can bar having any major rainstorms or anything like that, things are looking about as favorable as they can. I know I've been in contact with Dave Overbo from the Highway Department quite a bit in the engineer's office, and things are kind of starting to pick up out in the county as far as plug culverts, clogged ditches and stuff. I noticed this morning on my drive in, County Road 34 had water going over at one spot just because of a plug culvert. So I know he's going to touch on that a little bit more, but again, that's kind of the nice thing of the declaration is it makes it a lot easier for him to line up some help to take care of those things.
Make sure you're coordinating that with the watershed as well. I mean,
Yeah.
yesterday at their meeting, there was some issues about Wilkin County dishes and stuff like that, and I know that you all coordinate, but I noticed a huge difference between yesterday morning and yesterday evening in terms of what those ditches were looking like.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I did speak to Bruce, I think last Friday a little bit. And then kind of to touch on that, this Wednesday evening, the city of Georgetown is having a kind of a flood preparation meeting. So Bruce Albright is going to be there from the Buffalo River Red Watershed District, and then myself, and I believe Sheriff Empting is going to be there also, just to kind of touch base with them and see what their trigger points are as far as if they need to plug up some holes in their diking system and
I
things
think
like
Commissioner
that.
Campbell brought up the fact that, to make sure you're included on that yesterday at their meeting. So
Yeah,
that-
yep, I talked to someone from the city of Georgetown last week and got thrown on their agenda.
Good.
So, I guess any other questions for flood-related questions or anything else from me?
Anything else? Any other discussion on this issue? Well, we have a motion. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
Thank you.
We're good to go. Thank you. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Gabe. Appreciate it. Georgia and Joe, Family Service Center update. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Want to go first, or
Yeah, go first, I suppose. You didn't have
want to give it a chance?
Yeah, we're fighting up here. I'll go first. I'll try not to get into the weeds too much here, but we've had a pretty good year this year with our department. It's been really busy like everybody else around here, but we've started to learn all the new buildings and stuff, and the guys are adapting real well to the new campus, so the growth of the campus anyway. So right now we have 6 full-time employees. That's including myself, and then 1 roster at night. So, but they're keeping up, and we're going through trainings and everything else, and things are starting to get smoothed out now. So we're doing good there. But some of the building projects that we're working on, obviously the jail, I've been kind of in the loop with every other week with the committee there, and always a to-do list there. Boiler project that happened this summer, that was a pretty significant project. It took, well, I would say it took all summer. It took 3 months, but it's been a real good improvement in there. Boiler room's a lot quieter now. I'm assuming that's translating to saving some money. So it idles down real low, and it's been it's just, I think that was a good move, and appreciated your guys' support on that. And so, but that took, we had a few bugs that we had to work out, but it's doing real well. And juvenile project, I'm working with James a little bit here and there, and if you need something, I jump in with him. And LEC, I was going to make the board aware that we had some warranty issues going on here, and I met with Steve Lansom, and typically with these new buildings you do see stuff within a 1-year warranty, but the list got a little bigger than we thought. So we got together, we're meeting with construction engineers, and felt that we needed to address this and stay on top of it. So as that year comes to a year, we should see that start fading out and stuff. So we're keeping an eye on that. And other than that, grounds was definitely, snow was a challenge this year. This was probably a year that a good test year, because we got a lot of snow obviously, and it's a lot of cold weather too. So we found that we got to push the snow out and move it right away, because it's such a tight campus. So Key Contracting's done a real good job on that. But yeah, it definitely it's manageable, and we learned a lot. Little nooks here and there we had to clean out. So but other than that, capital improvement, we're meeting tomorrow. It's the first time the committee's met in been 6 months, been a little while. So we're starting to look at the next 5 years. I think we have some bigger projects I feel that are, we should start looking at. Service Center definitely has some projects that we should start looking down the road on, and but we'll talk more about that tomorrow. And other than that, probation, Janelle, working with her on this new probation. Well, I wouldn't say it's new. Every once in a while we get a client that needed to work 10, 20 hours off. It's not so much SDS, just working a few hours off here and there. And we used to get one once in a while, but I reached out to her and asked if she had any more, and now I've been getting
tons of them going, so I appreciate that, Janelle. Oh, she's gone now, but, yeah, but no, it really has been good. They come and they work a day or two, and of course, I've been working with SDS too. They've helped us out too, so. But other than that, not a whole lot. Equipment-wise, we're doing good. The only thing aging is our Jeep, and I think it was Dave's Jeep that we took from him. So other than that, our pickups are in good shape, and I don't think we have anything big that way. So other than that, just keep it brief. Any questions for me?
Thanks, Joe. Any questions for Joe?
Okay, the Family Service Center, it's 100% occupied. We did not raise our rental rate this year, but we will be doing an annual review of the market comparison. And budget-wise, we came in fairly well with our current rate. Again, we are 100% full. One of the things we'll probably be looking at and bringing to the Facilities Committee and the board is, being the building's 100% occupied, we don't have space for the departments to grow. Several, both the county and non-county tenants, are looking for additional space to grow within the building, and of course now we're getting to that point where we'll be looking for direction as far as, do we want to renew all the leases, or where will we put the people? So that probably will be coming forth fairly soon. Capital projects, we accomplished this last year, and thanks to Joe and his department, we're involved in majority of them, if not all. We replaced our west elevator, which was our service elevator that goes down to the tunnel. We just recently completed that. We're updating carpet and paint. We got the juvenile center, the office staff relocated into the family service center. We recently had the new replacement cameras installed in the family service center. And then we purchased with new buildings several dollars worth of custodial equipment. We provided training and equipment for those buildings. We did, again, Joe's department was involved, and the highway department was the ADA sidewalks around the campus and the building, and then some additional landscaping. We have ongoing meetings with the tenants regarding the safety. We do the evacuation drills of the building. We're also meeting with just updated the plans for the flood. Hopefully we won't need it, but it's a good time to review it with contact information. One of the areas we struggle, and we seem to be struggling with it ongoing, but again, we use probation when we can, and we've actually worked with the juvenile center, with the kids in the juvenile center to help us out with the cleaning. We have a total of 13 roster variable hour staff, which have to work after 4:30. In the last 5 years, we've hired 35 employees for those positions. We have been able to make it work. There's a lot of pluses with that, but it is an ongoing process to get those positions filled. Some of it is due to the hours. Mainly, I would say probably the hours. As the building and campus grows, we struggle with the correctional facility with the hours that they would like us to clean in there. I think we're meeting the needs at this time, but I think as the buildings and the next addition comes, we probably will be looking at not necessarily full-time, but to be creative to make sure we can fill those needs. Other than that, I guess it's pretty much the same. We have the fleet vehicles we'll probably be looking to replace. I did get a request via social services to see if we could add an additional. The usage of the vehicles are quite, we do refuse several just because of the usage is so high. We still have the mailroom staff. There are 2 part-time people that fill the position, and then they contract with social services for 4 hours for the day that generates some revenue. And then we also have an outside agency that is renting space out at the old highway department, the motor vehicle building, that rents for bus storage, that we're still continuing with that. Otherwise, it's pretty much day to day. And
Thanks, Joe. Just any questions for George? Kevin?
Georgia, you mentioned the correctional facility and maybe when the new portion opens. Do you know if the kitchen contract will that be their responsibility to clean that, or will that be your responsibility to clean that?
We haven't, we've discussed it a little bit. I believe they clean portions of it. Right now, we're only cleaning the common areas. But
I think that might be good for you to talk with Julie on that, to make sure that you're aware of what the
need is.
Because if you have to go and clean kitchen, that's
a different clean.
That's, well, and it's a lot more often. Yeah.
We did not clean that area in the old facility. That's not to say we won't in the new one,
Yeah,
but
but
right now.
they didn't operate a kitchen though.
Right, right. I'll check with you.
Yeah, I just suggest
Yep, yep.
you work with that. You don't want any surprises when you're dealing with your budget.
Any other questions?
Thanks for the work you
Yeah,
guys do.
thank you.
Yeah, you do great, you guys do great work, we appreciate it, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Georgia,
Yep.
thanks, Joe. Steve, change order for the juvenile center construction project.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As you mentioned, this morning we have a request for change order 22. All these items do specifically pertain to the juvenile facility. I can go through each of these if it would be beneficial to the board. CP 14 has to do with cabinet heating, existing cabinet heating being moved and raised into and reinstalled back into the roof. CP 20 is a code issue, had to do with ADA and making sure there was enough clearance for ADA with the toilet. CP's 24 had to do with a potential square foot issue with some of the rooms, and so a wall had to be moved, which required additional masonry. CP 25 had to do with the existing steel fire protection repair in the facility. When it was first constructed, they put the HVAC and then they put the spray up for the fire protection, and so when we've removed that HVAC now, we've had to go back in and add the fire protection in those areas. CP 28 is a drain that was added in the Sally port of the juvenile center. CP 23 kitchen laundry dishwasher. It was determined that there needed to be a water softener and a strainer that was needed to be in the new kitchen area. CP 19 was door and hardware revisions. There was an issue going into the family service center where we needed to have a card reader in order for panic buttons or bars to work, so youth couldn't just leave the facility. And so that was a change. There's also some of the ADA issues with the handicap buttons that didn't have the ability to be wired in with the walls of the existing buildings, and so they had to look at a different way of working that. CP 27, as they refigured some of the different areas, there were different steel beams that needed to be covered in soffits so kids would not have the ability to tie off in certain areas, and so that was added. And then lastly, the dishwasher waste and garage hose bib in PR 09. Water was added to the garage. One of the things that the juvenile center is for a number of years has cleaned the inside of the fleet vehicles, and in the new facility they'll also have the ability to clean the outsides also. So total change order requested today is $29,174. As per our previous plans, we've taken that and removed it from contractor contingencies, and that is the request that we have before you.
Jenny has a
A couple of these things just kind of seem like, how did we miss this at the beginning? I mean, I guess I've not been in those committees, so
Sure.
I mean, thinking about this.
No, Commissioner, I think you're on. I think there's been a number of things from our owners' meetings of recent that have been a little bit frustrating.
I mean, a dishwasher, anyone that has a garage knows right here in Clay County knows that you should probably have a drain, because otherwise it's just gonna be a mess all the time, so. I just am not quite sure how we miss so many of these things.
There's been some frustration, there's no doubt about that, so. This is almost headed to be a standing agenda item, so it's unfortunately, so.
I mean, I guess my question, if these all would have been added onto the bid and stuff like that, I mean, I guess it's, when you accept the bid, now we've got all these additions going on, did some of the other people include this in their bids, or?
What you got to remember, though, these are things that I don't see these as things that are I don't see it as construction engineers' fault.
No.
They put their bid on based on what was, what was given to them.
By the architect?
By the architects.
Yeah.
So, we've got some, certainly there's some issues there, and I agree with Commissioner Mojo that, it has been frustrating. I sit in those meetings and we shake our head and we ask, well, why shouldn't this have been common to put in, and some of them are surprises. And some of the more expensive ones are surprises. For example, when they did not know what was up underneath the ceilings, when it had to come to do the fire-resistant painting and stuff like that, which was very expensive. But there's some areas, and I think there's some areas we're not done with, and some of these areas where you're questioning, they started off even bigger numbers.
Right, and I get that.
And we've dwindled those down,
And I know there are things behind walls that you can't plan
Right.
for, but I mean, hardware revisions on that security piece, I mean, that's a no.
Yeah, some things should have been dealt with at the architectural level, but,
And some of these though are additions that have been done or changes that have been made based on staff's review and recommendation as the project's moved on. So it's not like they're.
Correct.
Some of them are new things that they didn't recognize, being the staff, that, boy, we'd like to have this, and so they want that incorporated, and so it goes to us and it's approved, so.
I just want to clarify on that though, and I know that you have a committee to kind of approve or deny that stuff, but, to hear, well, it's staff, this is something that they want. I get that there's wants and needs, and I get that there are a lot of needs and things that have to be done, but when you say these requests just keep coming, it's hard, it's frustrating.
What have we got left in contingency, or what is there?
Well, I think right, I think.
Because I thought last time we
That's
said
gonna
we're
be
just
part of
throwing
the
out.
committee report, I think, so. Let me look here. I'll try to do it during my committee.
Okay. We still got money though, huh?
Yeah, well, I was going to comment on that because it is going down. I think we're down to, between all contingency dollars now, we're probably under $100,000 in the entire contingency.
Okay.
well, any other discussion on this issue?
I want to bring up, one of the important things with these change orders too is that, as we approach, we still got, 8-9 months of this before this is ready to go. And we need, on all of these changes, we need to keep good track of what was the secure versus non-secure. Because most of it, I think, is falling on the secure side. In any of those areas in the secure side, if we exceed what we had anticipated through the contingencies, then that's not just Clay County's responsibility.
We share that amongst our.
Yeah, so we got to make sure that we're tracking that. I'm not hitting the panic button yet, but and again, this is the difference between remodel versus new. You're going to have these surprises, so.
What are the board's wishes on this item?
Make a motion to approve change order number 21, is it?
22.
22.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the request. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Highway Department. Still got the same sidekick, huh, Dave?
Last week.
Oh.
Yeah, last one. Be a little short-handed, but hopefully we got other guys that will pitch in and help out. I think I've got 2 items and then an agenda addition. Do you want me to start with the addition, or?
Yeah, why don't you do the addition first?
Okay. After we had the meeting yesterday with the governor's office, there was some discussion between emergency management and myself as far as hiring contractors, and we got a lot of calls yesterday. Today's been really good. Haven't gotten anything going today yet. I think it was nice and cool last night, but yesterday we were digging ditches in 2 different parts of the county, as well as there's several other parts that were getting pretty emergency related. So I guess, and in talking with Lori and working with Administrator Larson, I guess there's some plans moving forward on costs and invoices and who's going to keep track of them when it comes to the flooding. And we would like to start looking at hiring contractors. We're just getting spread out too thin. Our guys can't be everywhere at once, and it would be nice to, like I said, I think the declaration kind of assumes that that's going to happen. Lori suggested we bring it up today at the county board meeting and have a discussion about it.
Well, it's something that from past experience, I know we need to do. I think you can get overwhelmed with some of the stuff too, and I think you're going to have to take the approach of I think the governor said it yesterday, life and property first. And so I think the areas where we might have residential impacts in regards of potential damage by having things blocked, I think they need to take a front seat in terms of priority versus just seeing something flow. Somebody wants to hurry up and see their ditch emptied, But again, and I think it's how much it backs up and what impact it's going to have by not doing it. I think you're going to have to make the calls there. But I certainly agree that we need to give you whatever you need to do to. When you're fighting a flood, you can't wait a week for a board to give you permission to do something.
Yeah, exactly. And like the way I seen it work 10 years ago, once you start digging a ditch, everybody wants everything dug out. And you're absolutely right. We do need to prioritize, and that's what we do. We've gotten several calls yesterday. We drove out and took a look at it, and there was nothing flowing, nothing opened up yet. And we're not going to run our equipment out there and start digging that ditch out where we got water running in. We had two commercial residences or buildings that were getting water in them yesterday.
There you go.
So those were dug out, protected, pumped, as well as we've also got the city of Felton has got water starting to back up within the city of Felton. We will prioritize those, and any home site that's got water getting close, definitely going to prioritize that. But it's hard to be everywhere, and we've got a great list of contractors. Several people have reached out to us, willing to aid us in any way we can. So,
where's the city of Felton got their water coming from?
It runs west out of town in the County 34 ditch. So what happens is all the culverts along there, a lot of people like to have the driveways every couple hundred feet, and they start developing subdivisions and things, and those are just very problematic, especially this time of year. That's typically why we don't like to see that happen.
Okay, any further questions? What's the board's wishes on this?
I would move the request on item number where the highway department is requesting to contract out additional manpower and equipment for aiding in ditch cleaning to aid in water flow as the melt progresses, and again using a priority.
And we do as much as we can in-house. We've got equipment and men as well. We've got culvert steamers, so we do everything we can in-house, and when we get over and done it, and that's when we start looking for additional resources.
And I have a second motion, I guess, before that.
I'll second.
Okay, so, and then Commissioner Mojo raised an issue earlier, and I think it's good for you to stay in contact, in your case, with both watershed districts.
Yep, absolutely.
On what's going on, and maybe they might have something that is a priority to them too, so just keep Bruce up to date.
Absolutely. 10 years ago, for every ditch we dug, they probably dug 2. I know they had a lot of contractors as well doing the same thing.
Yeah, they got some stuff going on too.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay.
All right, Agenda A, approval of our 5-year road construction plan. We did meet with our highway committee, as well as we did have a public input meeting on March 20th. Very well attended. It was a lot of fun going through this. The individuals that come have transportation in mind. They each are in different areas, usually the guys that show up. It's usually the same kind of group of guys that show up. And we sit around, I think Frank, we must have talked for over an hour at least. About
Almost 2 hours.
Almost 2 hours, and yeah, it was a good meeting. I think the 5-year plan turned out very good again. Eric and I have been working very closely with pavement preservation, and that's something that we're going to probably continue to spend our dollars on. The improvements and grade widening type projects are, you know, in a 5-year plan, you're probably going to see maybe one at the most here in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to mostly preserving the system that we already have in place and trying not to have that further degrade to a point where we have to spend and regrade the existing roads that we've already graded. So most of the work in this plan is going to be preservation type things. In 2019, our big project is going to be City of Glendon. It's going to be tying up almost all of our resources. We've got some small bridge replacement projects that we're waiting for bond funds on, and we're also going to do some seal coating there, again preserving the existing system that we have.
Do you have like a summary of the minutes from the meeting for us to see what those wish lists for the other people in the county are? You know, I know that you kind of talk about that at the highway committee meeting, but just for the rest of us to see what kind of the people are asking for.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't know if there were very many of them other than.
County Road 115, that usually gets brought up.
115, that
gets
one came
brought up
up,
every
yeah.
year. And I think the projects that we have, you know, County Road 33, I think that was one that kind of made its way on the plan from a couple of years ago, but I can summarize the conversation, absolutely.
I think 34 up in Ulen and 6 down by Turtle Lake there.
Yeah.
I mean, those are all some that have been requested, they're on there now, so a lot of the requests are on there. So, like I say, 115 is about the only one that came up at the meeting that wasn't on our list.
And Eric's been working with the guys, we've got some survey out there to do some of the work. There's some ditches that are higher than the roadway. So I know we're already kind of working on doing some work out there, as well as it talks about a lot of washboards out there. It's not a 5-year plan type of a project, but we're maybe going to look at some dust control or chloride to control if it's you know, and I believe their washboards probably are terrible out there, so we can try to control that too. 2019, we've got some federal aid bridge dollars that came into the county to the tune of about $750,000. These projects would normally be funded with bridge bond funds, so essentially it's going to be a shift of money. It's going to be federal aid funds coming into Clay County. It's a fantastic way to get resources for these bridge replacements. In the event we don't see bond funds, it's going to be nice that we know we'll at least be replacing 6 different structures in different locations. We're also going to be working on a lot of bituminous paving this year. County Road 2, going west to east to Comstock. We've got County Road 14, that's by the Glendon Beat Piler. We've got some federal aid dollars for shoulder paving as well as an overlay on that one. County Road 33 north of Holly, we're also looking at overlay there. And then the one grading project in our 5-year plan is on County Road 1, just north of Oakport Township. It's got about 1,000 cars a day on it, and Eric and I have been kicking around whether we can try to overlay it or regrade it. And the structure is just too far gone. It's too old. It's too narrow as well. It's extremely narrow. So that one was first year of our grading on that. Year 2021 again is more asphalt paving on County Road 6 out by the pits by the Becker Otter Tail County line. County Road 23, our landfill project, we've applied several years for grant funds for that one and have been unsuccessful. So we've included that one as an overlay. County Road 1, we're going to do the paving on that new grade. And then we've got an urban reconstruct, kind of a cooperative project with the city of Holly. We double checked with Lisa, the administrator in Holly, and we are spot on for the year on that one. So they've got water and sewer work to get done as well. So we've got kind of an MOU already drafted up, and the board approved that, is that correct? So we're on track for that project in 2021. 2022, we got more bridge replacements. Hopefully there's funding. This is the one year where we did add one project from previous 5-year plan, County Road 12. We did add some bituminous surfacing on that one. By far our busiest section of roadway in the county. I think it's got the eastern section of that's got about 2,300 cars a day. As you get closer to the Red River, it's over 6,000 cars a day. So we included this one because we also have federal aid funds on County Road 52. There again, that one's got 5,200 cars a day. It was overlaid the first year I started in 2001, so we got, we're going to end up with 21 years on an overlay, which is pretty good, especially if I don't want traffic. We still got the old concrete road bed that was in there from the 30s, but it's, I think perpetual pavement is a good thing. So if we can mill that off and overlay it again and try to get another 20 years out of it before we have to tear all that. We did a section down by Barnesville where you did tear the old concrete panels out. It's expensive, but it's the ideal way to go because you can get the water problems from underneath the road bed kind of out of there with that concrete. It kind of traps water a little bit. But what we did last time worked pretty good, and I think we should get another 20 years out of it. We also had federal aid funds for an overlay on County 31 south of Holly. We've got an overlay on County Road 3. Another very busy, very suburban type roadway, receives a lot of calls. I know Commissioner Campbell and myself, we get a lot of calls on speed issues and volume issues and truck traffic and things, so I think an overlay up there is definitely warranted. We've also got a project shown for the city Comstock. There is some potential diversion funds targeted for this one, and I think we're kind of trying to vet that through the diversion authority. Whether that happens or not, I think it's kind of a placeholder for a project. We know we need to get out there. They've got some, the road bed itself is fairly low. They've got some stormwater issues. Condition-wise, it's not real good. We are spending municipal state aid money this current summer in Glendon. We've also got municipal dollars targeted for the project in Holly, so those funds don't replenish themselves very quickly, but I guess it's on our radar, and we're going to do everything we can to keep this project in line. And then the last year of the plan, we pretty much put the entire focus on preservation, like I mentioned earlier. County Road 26, we've got a lot of rutting out there. There's a lot of aggregate that gets hauled across Clay County, and we're starting to really see those ruts. When you get a lot of rain in there, you've got a lot of dishing out. In the wintertime, you can't even hardly plow snow off it because the blade just can't scrape off the entire surface. So we've got a 20-mile mill and thin overlay plan for that to remove some of the rutting as well as put a new surface on there. So it's about a $4 million project. Very, very important, very well needed. We did also add County Road 34, some paving out east of Ulen. It's another area that we do receive quite a few calls on. There's some ride issues. There's a little dip out there that it was a previous flood site, I think, back in either 2000, I think it was in 2002. But we're looking at a little overlay on that section as well.
I think one other thing we discussed at that meeting too was the new process we tried last fall, reclaiming.
Yeah, it was a kind of gravel reclamation stabilization project. So we brought out new gravel, we run it through the reclaimer with the stabilization chemical added at the same time, and then we just packed and rolled it, and hopefully that turned out real good. That's on County Road 122 and 123, and a little piece on 37, and we're also looking at doing that on a site or two in the northern part of the county. We've got another major farm facility that's generated hundreds and hundreds of truckloads, so we're looking at doing that very same thing up there, and if it works, maybe some of these, maybe other entity, maybe the township roads that there's some townships that have 300 or 400 cars a day on them. It might be a good, plan for them to try it as well.
Kevin, when you do the grading, like on County Road 1, you mentioned that's narrow, and it's, if I recall right, it's also got pretty steep slopes. So so when we widen that, we have to change that slope, right?
Yep, everything's got to be a 4-to-1 minimum.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right now I'm sure it's probably a 3-to-1, which is kind of what they designed back in the 50s,
Right.
60s, and 70s.
Yeah, you can almost fall off of that. It's like falling off a cliff.
I tried my darndest to see if we could just limp it along and overlay it, but it just didn't work. Condition-wise, the testing that we did on what's existing out there for pavement didn't warrant an overlay. I think it would have been kind of, felt to have been infeasible. We've been throwing our money away. It wouldn't have lasted. And the other thing is it's just so narrow with the volume. Traffic kind of determines how wide things are, and we're right on the bubble on even being able to not overlay. If you put money into something, you always have to meet the next standard. It was just too close. It just didn't quite work out.
And I stepped out for a second. Did you touch base on the allotment issue?
No, so the,
Yeah, maybe, yeah, okay, go ahead.
so 2018 and 2019, we did see an additional $500,000 of our state aid allotment. It's in the top right corner of the 5-year plan. It bumped it from roughly about 3.2 up to about $3.7 million. It was a huge impact, and I think a lot of that had to do with the sale of auto parts that were then dedicated on like a 2-year basis to the highway user fund for the counties to use. That money is not guaranteed, and I think the governor's got a whole new transportation plan that he's trying to roll out. So what we did for years 2020 through 2023 is we went back to a conservative level is what we've been kind of given guidance from the state aid needs unit, and we just went back to that 3.2 level. In the event that maybe those dollars mean, you know, the 3.7 threshold kind of comes back to us, we might end up with an additional $2 million in this plan that some of the projects that are
For the remaining 4 years.
for the remaining 4 years, that would make them a lot more easy. You know, like the Comstock project would be have a lot more funds for us to make sure we get that project done in the timeline that we're hoping.
Yeah, I think the, you know, that the issue with the sale, the tax on the auto parts, I think it was AMC's position at one time was to have it constitutionally dedicated to transportation. Well, they didn't do that, so the legislature elected not to do that. But I would, you know, I'm hopeful that they're gonna continue either that, if they, I think the governor's proposal is like a 20-cent increase in gas tax, and I think, you know, listening to Paul Marquardt and some local legislatures, I don't think there's much of a chance of that happening, but anyway, I think there's, I think we have some more opportunities with dollars that'll come in that we just didn't dare to budget right now, but.
This looks good. My comment is with MetroCog, they were talking about their 2020 contracted planning projects. They're also soliciting future ideas for projects. I have this, you can have it. I know that, you know, Fargo and Moorhead or Horace are really great about proposing a bunch of different projects, and our bike corridor was on there for CASA 7. Just, there's dollars there, so the more that we can use to kind of help out, that's, I think, a good plan, so you guys can have this.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion, questions?
I move approval of the 5-year plan.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the 5-year plan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
All right, well, maybe I'll let Eric talk about the project he worked on this past summer. It's a final for our lighting project.
Yeah, so this is a rural intersection lighting project. You've probably seen a couple of them pop up out in the rural counties, but it's a joint project between Clay, Becker, Wilkin, and Monoman. Clay County took the lead on the project, so we let the contract and did all the administration on it. Otter Electric was the contractor out of Fergus. Project turned out really well, and the final amount for approval is $370,621.90.
Okay, questions for Eric?
Does that funding cover the overage?
We did have one change due to some utility conflicts, and that change order was approved through state aid, so it should be eligible for some funding. Yep. And I believe it's 80% federal funds on this one, 80 or 90%.
I'll make a motion to approve the final contract.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve.
That's 378 now. Is that our 20% or is that the 80?
So that's the entire project.
That's the entire
all
project.
four
Okay,
counties.
thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
One thing I would like to mention too, I talked with Gabe a little bit, just to mention for the board and for the public, there is a road closure app that's on the county website. There's a big flood tab there. It is up and running. I know the Mark Sloan kind of developed this thing, so him and his staff developed it, and Gabe has kind of helped with the different codes, you know, like if there's an accident or, you know, and it's something that is going to be in place more than just during flood times. It's going to be in place for winter closures if there's an accident or hay bales are on fire in a ditch or anything, but it's kind of an interactive type of an app that anybody can call in, and then county staff can put put on there if there's a closure. That's, it's kind of like maybe the Min 5.1 map that MnDOT has, so kind of exciting, and looking forward to, hopefully that helps our residents see where there is closures and things like that during this critical period that we're in.
Okay, thank you. Good luck, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
Jenny?
Your comments about flood, Gabe, before you leave, have we told the public, is Clay County filling sandbags, or are we doing sandbags at the city of Moorhead?
No, so past practice is the county hasn't filled sandbags for Element County. As for townships, they have a request for sandbags, they can make them. We wouldn't supply sandbags to like private residences, so like I live rural, if I needed a sandbag around my house, that's my responsibility to line up sandbags and sand. So at this point, we have no plans to fill sandbags.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item is presentation on West Central Minnesota Community Action Programs.
That was canceled.
Oh, that was canceled, sorry. Sorry, that was canceled.
Thank you.
Rhonda, you come on up, you've got an addition on yours.
I am presenting in place of them. I actually had an addition that took the spot of this presentation that apparently was canceled. So I am here today to request your approval to resubmit a grant application that we currently have to the Minnesota Department of Human Services. So last year around this time, you approved a Clay County serving as the fiscal host for our 10-county region to apply for funds from the Department of Human Services for helping to house and support folks with disabilities in our 10-county region. So we submitted that grant. We were requesting about $450,000. We got about $385,000. We, in turn, are contracting with Clay County HRA, who in turn is contracting with our 3 community action agencies that are serving our 10-county region. It was a 1-year grant, and the next round of funds is due on Friday, and they're entering into 2-year grant contracts. So we would like to resubmit our application, which would be essentially the same, but we're requesting 1 additional outreach worker for our Clay Wilkin area just because of the volume. So far, the grant period runs July to June, and when we got the grant funds, really we've probably been full staffed and everything since September. But we have been able to, in our region, successfully house 86 individuals with disabilities. They've made outreach to almost 160 individuals in our region that have disabilities and are either precariously housed or folks that are homeless or having difficulties with housing issues. So far, I think we've been very successful, and we have a good chance of getting those additional funds. So I am essentially seeking your permission to reapply with Clay County as the fiscal host.
Thank you. Any questions for Rhonda on this item? And the board's wishes?
I would like to make a motion to approve her request.
I have a motion to approve the request. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Rhonda. Okay, presentation on public lands managed by the Department of Natural Resources. Good morning, Rita.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to come before the commission, and thanks to your administrator for working with our staff to arrange this meeting. I don't know, did you get a copy of that? Okay, I have some extra copies if others in the room would like one, but my name is Rita Albright. I'm the Regional Director for Northwest Minnesota for the Department of Natural Resources, and I have met Commissioner Mojo, the Governor's Task Force that we had here last year, and maybe others too look familiar to me. So thanks for having us. I have with me Nathan. I'll let him introduce himself.
Sure. My name is Nathan Kessner. I'm the Regional Director for the Division of Ecological and Water Resources.
And we also have Mike Bowler, who's our wildlife manager in this area, and most of our lands are wildlife lands, and so if you have questions about lands, we'll bring Mike up and...
Yeah, you may have dealt with Don Schultz in the past.
Yes.
Yeah.
Recently retired, so just followed me now.
Yeah.
For a while.
We're searching that job yet, right? Yeah. Okay. So, you know, I just briefly wanted to share with you that we don't have any issues necessarily or any particular item that we wanted to discuss, but we're just coming to visiting all of our counties in the Northwest region. It's 23, so it takes us a while to get around to everyone. And actually some counties need more attention than others. So we wanted just to come and have a visit with you and talk about the work that we do in your county on behalf of the state of Minnesota. And so you can see this handout that I have. We just have some listing of some of the state lands that we manage in this county, as well as talking about some of the successes. And you can read them for yourself, but I did want to mention that it says, I think it's about the 5th bullet down there, over $75 million in state funding. At this time of year, we're all thinking about floods, right? That we've had in the city of Moorhead. I would say in the region here, in this Moorhead region, it's more like $150 million that the state has invested in partnership with the communities, individuals, the watershed districts, and the city to provide flood damage reduction and also you know, just protection, health and safety for property and life in the region. And so I know that's kind of top of your mind right now, but I'm happy to talk about anything else. I think that our parks presence here at Buffalo River State Park is really an important asset that you have in your county, and we know that it's a very busy park. It's got a pretty good economic impact for the area, and you know, I want to say that it also employs a lot of people in the area and a lot of part-timers as well, so that's helpful for the economic impact too. I want to give Nathan a chance to comment on anything that he wants to say, because Nathan is our waters manager in this region, and his staff are the people out there with stream gauges and whatnot, trying to help identify for, I saw HSCM was here and just giving updates every single day on what's happening with our stream gauges, and I will also say that we're doing flood preparedness as well, because the state, the DNR on behalf of the state, supplies a lot of equipment and staff to help with flood fighting when that time should come. So whether that's boats or pumps or other kinds of equipment, we're standing at the ready for that should we need to be called. But I'll just let Nathan say a few words.
Sure. Again, Nathan Kessner, Ecological and Water Resources. So it's two parts: ecological, that's things like rare species, SNAs. You've got 4 SNAs in Clay County, Felton Prairie, Blue Stem, and a couple other ones. And then the waters, certainly flood damage reduction efforts. We're working with the watershed districts on flood damage reduction projects that provide both flood benefits as well as some natural resource enhancements. We oversee the floodplain Management Act. We've done a lot of work with Clay County, City of Moorhead. We've got a grant program that Rita mentioned. And then also the permitting, dam safety, you've heard about that. We issued the dam permit for the big project nearby here on December 27th. Aquatic invasive species is another one of our programs. Red River has zebra mussels, as you probably know. And then water appropriation permitting, so that's the irrigation, things like that. And then lakeshore protection, shoreline management. So that's a variety of the different programs that we oversee for the state of Minnesota. You know, I'm just happy to be here to put some faces to names, to listen to any concerns that you may have, try to answer questions. If I'm not able to connect you with some of my staff. Speaking of staff, my waters staff in this area, Roger Hemphill, maybe you know him, he's our area hydrologist. So he's the one you'd go to for questions about what we're doing with the watershed districts in the area, or maybe a permitting issue.
Is he at
Maybe
Detroit
working on
Lakes
it.
now, or?
Yeah, he is.
So he replaced, who was?
Henry Van Uffelen was a Red River coordinator in the past, but he's been a hydro there for some time.
So
Okay.
we've got Roger doing 2 jobs right now. He's kind of working a little bit out of class for some of the things that are Red River Basin specific that Henry Van Uffelen had been doing, but he's also the area hydrologist. We're trying to permanently fill that Red River Basin position right now, but until we do, Roger's kind of wearing 2 hats.
What kind of funds are available with that aquatic species you were talking about for Clay County? Does each county get so much in funds, or?
So there's a couple different sources of funding. There's pass-through money, so maybe you've heard of the $50 million that's available to the different counties.
10 million.
It's 10 million?
I think it's 10.
Yeah, it is.
We
Sorry
wish it
about
were
that.
50, but
Yeah, we wish it was 50. But anyways,
All of the counties.
that
Yeah.
money is channeled to the different counties based on need, and we measure that need based on how many public water accesses you have.
Yeah.
So the lake-rich, the access-rich counties tend to get more money. Counties are really free to use that money in some really unique ways. We've got Beltrami County, they're providing their own grant program to people that want to maybe do some aquatic plant removal or some treatment in different areas. We've got other counties, buying video equipment to do ISAT accesses, to have speakers that provide education for when people are pulling up to a different public access. Other sources of funding, probably not directly available to the county, but they do come to the Aquatic Invasive Species Program, and that is funding for our staff to provide education and support to the local government units. We do have a smaller grant program that DNR administers.
It's not been funded?
It has unfortunately not been funded for the past year. Whether or not that comes back, I guess we'll wait and see how the session goes.
Did you have a particular issue that you're thinking of?
Well, I'm just looking at the Soil and Water Conservation District. Kevin Kassenberg's asked me, how can they participate in that? Where do you get the funds, or how many funds, how much is available?
Do you know how many public water access sites you have in the county?
Yeah,
Because I do not. I don't have that number off the top of my head.
No, I don't know how many public,
Yeah,
We
and that's
turn
where
ours over to somebody.
the
If you
funding
need-
formula comes from, and in some ways, it seems somewhat unfair, especially when you think about the Red River, which is such an important resource. And it's a big impact even internationally, and that's why we want to.
The funds we get for that we've turned over to
The Basin Commission, they kind of,
Okay, so you've passed that on to the Basin Commission?
yeah,
Right, to take care
with the idea in mind that it's for that purpose, for the,
Yep.
invasive
So you must
species.
have, Ted must come and
Yeah,
report to you. on
right,
that.
right, and we just felt that they're better equipped to
But I
deal with
think
that.
Becker County does a pretty substantial campaign with their funds in terms of
Oh,
the
yeah.
soil and water, and I think that's probably why our soil and water is asking us.
Yeah, where's our money, huh?
Well, just, everyone does it different.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's the key that Nathan was mentioning, that every county is different, because all your waters are different, all your needs are different, and so they're using them in creative ways. It's pretty open-ended how you can use those funds. They're just a grant to the counties for AIS prevention and education.
I think one of the most common ways that I'm seeing these funds being used is for counties to hire their own inspectors. So the different folks at the access is providing education and inspection.
Right.
And I think the amount that we get doesn't quite do that, so
Probably
so I
not.
think we kind of went with, as Ted talked about, I think it's more of a pooled approach to help us.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
So leverage some other
little bit
dollars
more
with
bang
your.
out of the buck.
Great, yeah. Do you have other questions? I know that we've recently had some acquisitions in Clay County for some WMAs, and Mike can talk about this more. But the Rogers tract is one place, the Nelson tract, the Fillmore tract, and we are in the process of doing an acquisition called the Dahl tract. So our partners are generally Pheasants Forever or Ducks Unlimited or some other Prairie Chicken Society also, and our goal is to preserve and recreate some of that prairie pothole area and the prairie plan that we are following to provide habitat that's been lost one way or the other. And hopefully that what we're doing is having willing landowners come to us who want to leave a conservation legacy for their family or for their community. And that's generally where we're getting our, the interest in providing some conservation land. So we're not necessarily actively out there seeking sites, but third parties do often bring us sites. Question?
Frank,
Yeah, I noticed that you got pill payments. You're saying you're paying $72,000 in pill payments. Do you have any idea how many acres that is? Or
Yes.
well, probably just telling me on it. I keep reading on this thing.
Yep, your pill payment, and this is a report that's available on the Department of Revenue site. So you can go to Department of Revenue and search PILT, and it'll have every county. So the acreage in this county is,
So 290.
I'm looking here. I would say it's just over, it's around 10,000 acres, it looks like. And I can leave this for you if you want.
And
I'd like a copy of that.
And I did run the numbers on the PILT payment,
pass
or I
it around.
had our staff run the numbers, and I think in terms of what the taxable income versus the PILT is about 20% more than what the taxable.
Especially with the WMA.
No, but I'm just, from the public's perspective,
Right.
we get criticized a lot for,
Right.
well, you're letting it go to PILT, and, the PILT payment is far less than the taxes, and so I think for
And
the
that
public
formula
needs
is all,
to know that.
excuse me, yep, that formula is all written out there. So generally speaking, WMAs are at 5.13 cents an acre. And some of that conservation land is not as tillable, for example, and so it makes more sense to have it in a conservation kind of setting where you will get some additional payment in lieu of taxes. So we hope that helps you make the case for public lands. We talk about our public lands as being owned by you, managed by DNR. So these are state lands, and in Clay County, there's about 2% public land ownership, which is a very small amount. You may have seen a map like this at AMC that shows the darker colors are where there is more public land, and the lighter colors are where there is less. And in Clay County, it's 2% public land. So not a whole lot, but certainly provides habitat for hunters and recreational opportunities as well.
What is your perception of the PILT payments? Do you think that's a program that's going to keep going, or, PILT payments are good.
Yeah.
As long as there's money available from the state,
Probably a better question for Senator Eakin, Representative Mark Lee. But my sense is that won't go away. I can't imagine your representatives wanting to support that, or any other across the state, because they recognize, and in the metro, honestly, they get some of the highest PILT payments as any counties, honestly, because they have a lot of public land in the metro area. So I know that's always something that county commissioners are concerned about, that the PILT payment might change. I think it might change, but my sense is it would increase because there's a recognition that public lands have a value beyond for hunters, but they have a public value that is shared across the state by everyone, in particular areas where clean water is, can be impacted, which in this area is probably the case, where we can do some clean water work, and Nathan could speak to that better, but my sense is that we recognize that as a state. This map for me is our badge of honor, because we are a state that others look to for our good work in public land management and preserving some of those lands. So the long answer is that, but the short answer is I don't expect a reduction in PILT. There could possibly be an increase in one if the legislature gets behind it.
The one other concern I had is with them getting some of these lands that are being bought, the weed control is not being properly done, so.
Well, that's something we'd like to know. Yeah, if there are noxious weeds on our lands, we have a commitment to manage those.
Okay, I'd have to come, I mean, like I say, it's a concern they have with it, to come up and say, well, right here in this section here, you got some weeds, but I don't have that, but,
Well, it's something, Mike, did you want to speak to weed control or noxious weeds at all?
Well, just that I guess, the county weed inspectors, when they a lot of times do approach us and say that they have issues with something, we generally address it, as quick as we can, of course. Sure. So we're, more than willing and happy to do that. We do that on our management areas, on a routine basis. Do surveillance in the spring, usually look for infestations and things like that, and then, do our work plan and treat accordingly. I mean, again, if there are specific sites,
well, I think that's gonna be my job when I get a complaint on it again. Give me an example so I can give it to you, so.
Yeah, and it would welcome those, because we certainly don't want them on our properties and, habitat, as far as having noxious weeds, the deer's habitat.
I would say those are some of the two main concerns I have when we talk about government-owned land and stuff like that. It's the bill payment and the weed control and stuff like that, so.
Just looking at the ownership, we've got 3 different divisions that have ownership: ecological and water resources, that's me, and that's the SNA, as I mentioned. There's a little bit of parks, and then the wildlife. So I think it's important to have relationships between the managers of those programs and then the county weed inspectors. So if you get a call, you've got a name and a number to connect them with. I mentioned Roger's name. We've got, for the SNA program, Shelley Hedke. She manages our SNAs. So that would be someone to contact, and we can follow up after this meeting with some names and numbers. So
I would like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You bet. Any other questions?
Kevin, you have questions?
Maybe Nathan, you talked about flood gauges and things of that nature. I was at the Buffalo Red meeting last night, and there was some discussion about flooding along the Buffalo River. And, I think Eric Jones had mentioned that they have basically the one gauge, and it's an old gauge, and I think it's way in the southern branch. And I'm just wondering, and I've argued this point for a long time, that even on the Red River, we seem to use one gauge south of Fargo that deals with so much, and then you get up north and all of a sudden it changes from feet to elevation, and it's so confusing to a lot of people who are trying to fight floods. And my question is how could the DNR help with maybe improving on flood gauges to help fight floods? And
so with the monitoring gauges that are out there, it's really a cooperative effort between the USGS and the DNR, and we're always kind of adapting based on where the needs are. And that would go with the monitoring well network as well. So if there's needs that are changing, it's important that we adapt with that. We also need the funding, right? And so that's something that we're always, striving to increase as well. I don't have the specific numbers with me that says we have this many dollars that we're planning to spend, but if, the locals who know most about the local conditions are recognizing the need, it's good for me to hear this.
Well, yeah, I was quite surprised when I heard him last night say they're old gauges and they're, way in the...
Specifically for Georgetown.
Yeah, and
that was the problem, because the gauge they use on the Red is south of Fargo, and then the gauge they use on the Buffalo is, 20 miles upstream of them, and so a lot changes in that.
And Georgetown is on the north side of Moorhead, is that right?
Yeah, and surprising to a lot of people is that, we had these 2 major floods, the 1997 and the 2009 floods that were historic in nature on the Red River, but actually Georgetown suffered its worst flooding from the 2011 flood. So that tells you that it was more of a Buffalo Red issue, and could we have had better data available by having you know, gauges maybe closer to Barnesville, or to Georgetown, I mean, to help in that matter and to help fighting floods, or to maybe give a little quicker response to what's happening. Because that can become critical, you know, when you're fighting floods.
So I'm hearing that you're recognizing the need to have more indoor gauging equipment. In some
I'm
specific
basing that
areas.
on what I heard from,
Yeah.
you know, and again, we'd have to, you know, we can certainly coordinate and talk. You know, I don't want to do the watersheds business for them, but I had an opportunity to bring it up to you because I heard it Monday night and I thought I should do it. And I still think there needs to be improved gauging on the Red River too. But.
Well, since you, if I might ask, Commissioner Campbell, went to the Buffalo Red meeting, we were trying to find out if they made a decision at that meeting, and I didn't see anything in the form, and so.
They were missing a board member,
Oh.
so they did not take any action last night. But, I was going to talk to you after the meeting.
Sure.
Or get your number. and
Yeah,
talk to you.
I'll send my cards around, but.
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything more about these
Not unless
acquisitions?
there was questions about, you know, wildlife in particular questions.
Yeah, I'll just send one.
Good cards
Well,
for all of you.
Yep.
Jim, what's the stream that you want Mike to put brook trout in?
Yes, I'd like to see Felton Creek
You know-
is designated as the trout stream. It
Okay.
has not.
Yeah.
And then there's a beaver problem up there now.
Which stream is that?
Felton Creek.
Okay. That's something that I can carry on to the fisheries staff.
Yes.
We're part of the Fish and Wildlife Division, and I'm the wildlife side of that division. So we'll bring that to
Okay.
folks there.
But
He's
yeah,
got
you know
he's
the-
got a wall hanger from years ago, so he wants to try
There's
that again.
Nathan's cards too, you could pass
Yeah.
around things. Is it cold water stream?
Yes.
And there are trout in it now?
There haven't been for a long time, since the 88, 90 drought time.
Oh, so you want it stocked or something?
Well, I don't know if that's necessary or not, but
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Is there a fish passage problem that they can't get there?
It's included with beaver dams right
Oh,
now.
beavers, yeah. Do you have a lot of trouble with beaver? Because we hear a lot of beaver issues whenever we go to the county.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That was
Our
a big-
kids kayak on the Buffalo Red South Branch, and there are a lot of beaver dams there.
Yeah, yeah.
I used to hear about it when I was living in Oakport, and there was some just north of the coulee there that was just a great mess.
And this is, you know, 20 years of a wet cycle that people have been around for the 20 years, you know, we recognize that, but if you haven't seen the dry cycles before, you don't really have a good picture of what changed.
I have another comment from the basin meeting, flood damage reduction meeting at the Marriott last week. They
Yes.
referenced the wolf pack around Downer, that, you know, they think there's about 5 to 10 wolves living over there. And actually, one of the watershed meeting was pretty informative last night.
Right, yeah.
They also said that they'd gone up in a little helicopter and seen about 6 of those wolves yesterday.
Took
what is-
pictures of them there.
how are we approaching giving information to landowners about dealing with these wolves that are now in Clay County?
Well, we have information that we obviously, you know, when we make a lot of contacts with the public when they call. I think we had 2 calls from that area, producers and stuff, that said, you know, we've seen the wolves, what should we be doing?
Right.
You know, and so it's their calving and things like that, so it keeps us safe. So a whole bunch of technical advice, but, and Rita, you may want to speak to the policy part of it, but, you know, the state doesn't manage wolves. We don't have the authority at this time to manage wolves until, you know, we're given that authority.
Right.
And
So from what my understanding
Hasn't
is,
been
as
completed.
long as human life is not if human life is not threatened, you can't do anything, correct?
Well, yeah,
I
and
think you're good with livestock too.
livestock, I don't know, can farmers shoot them?
With livestock, no, the farmer can't, the producer
Can't touch
can't.
it.
But they can call Wildlife Services and they will send a trapper and they'll deal with the situation. We routinely, not us, but USDA
Yep.
dispatches trappers and shooters, if you will, that deal with it, and so we do that all over the state.
And there is wolf depredation funding from USDA through, Minnesota Department of Ag,
Doing
not a
the
lot.
last piece.
And it's shared wolf depredation and elk depredation, and so they're kind of commingled and we usually get used up. I don't know, it seems like it's around $75,000 or something, I'm not sure. But that requires a call to MDA to come out. So it's a little bit shared responsibility among the agencies, whether that's Cervid Farms, Board of Animal Health, or wolves and elk depredation, Department of Ag, or Mike's gonna go talk about deer depredation.
By Oakport. But anyways, anyone that you have, anyone has questions or, concerns, direct them to my office.
Right.
Did you include your card in here too?
I have them back here all.
Is there a bounty on beavers at all?
No, that's something though, I do have a monthly meeting with Joint County Natural Resource Board, which is 8 counties that have con-con ditches. And we talk about, they have a lot of ditches and they talk about beavers a lot. They're looking at AMC to try and have, introduce legislation to provide additional funding to counties for beaver removal, because it's a big issue. And there used to be a bounty, apparently that worked quite well, and they'd like to have something like that come back, but it'll probably take some state funding in order to have that as a management practice.
So you want to do gophers too then? Or
Yeah.
work that in?
Well, we've used up our time and then some, but I don't want to stop if there are other questions that you have for us. Appreciate the time that you've given us, and we'll.
Could you put a phone number, is that a right contact for you, Nathan?
For Nathan,
I
did you
could
run
send her
out?
out some
Oh,
cards.
did I
Yeah,
not
I've
get
got
the?
a few more,
Yeah.
need some more.
Oh, I didn't get I got this one, but I didn't.
Just to wrap up,
okay.
what I
I'll leave
heard
a
was
couple
you'd
more
like to
here.
have a list of DNR staff. Maybe I can rely on Mr. Larson to get the PILT information off of the Department of Revenue site. I did leave one behind. Maybe a map of, are you interested in a map of stream gauges or understanding?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that would be good.
We can do that,
I-
and we'll ask about a gauge up at the Georgetown area.
Well, I think, I've been attending some of these Buffalo Red meetings recently because of the,
Yep.
and I, maybe the next meeting we go to, maybe Commissioner Moser and I can both talk about your presentation this morning and the fact that we brought up about the river gauges, and I think that's something that they can take the lead on. I was curious about it after hearing them,
And then we had a question on Trout Stream,
Yes.
Felton Creek.
That's
Was there
correct.
anything else that I missed? Appreciate your time. It's been fun and interesting to hear your questions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good luck with the flood fight.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Rita, Nathan, Mike. Appreciate you being here.
Question about turkeys in Moorhead then.
I
Take some with you.
They get out of my way when I drive by.
As soon as I get rid of this, I'm willing to help out with that problem, so, yeah.
I might just stop talking to Rita for 1 second, so you can start with somebody else.
Okay, moving on, committee reports, Jenny.
Thank you. Last week I attended a MetroCog meeting regarding the 12th Avenue South proposed project in Moorhead. I felt that one is a really good plan to deal with a pretty major corridor through central Moorhead, but also it was encouraging to see so many people from the community to offer their input, so that was helpful. I attended the water conference, the Red River Basin Drainage Conference, the Red River Watershed Management Board at their flood damage reduction meeting at the Marriott, and I just think the Red Board is doing some pretty good projects. It remains to be seen if the Buffalo Red should join in that. I think that continues to be a question, but I think pretty good informational pieces on groundwater and dealing with tiling and all of those efforts that farmers seem to be using. I attended the MetroCog main board meeting last week as well, and I brought up the piece in regards to future planning dollars that could be available. I encourage Clay County to submit their proposals on anything there. We did have a discussion about the FM diversion recreational plan, and what that is on the North Dakota side. They're seeking RFPs for using some sort of recreational trails or whatever on the channel side of North Dakota. So they went forward with that. We approved the 2020 contracted projects. and approved a temporary lease with the city of Fargo. We are using some CPG dollars that had been unused for a few years to have a small remodel of the office space there, which is important because, as Commissioner Gross has said, that conference room is small, so that will expand that, and I think that's a good thing for everybody. I attended the Lakeland Mental Health Board meeting yesterday. We had a meeting before the meeting for the executive committee to discuss the bylaws in terms of term limits for members, and we decided to not make any changes. You can currently serve 3 terms. Mike McCarthy is still serves in our capacity. He does a great job, and he is on the personnel committee, and they met. We had a pretty good update from the Clay County Collaborative as well as the Otter Tail County Collaborative, but one item of note is the school-based mental health services that we have in our different schools. Barnesville has been really pleased with the services offered there. They kind of had some hiccups at the beginning, but has been a good thing. And what we're going to kind of look at, we've already implemented the skills piece of the mental health needs, but we're hoping to add some of the therapy needs in some of those other schools. Otter Tail gave an update in regards to the White Earth Reservation and any experiences that are playing into some of the issues that they're dealing with there. And we had a pretty long discussion on our programming trends. Our margins there have always been slightly positive, and the Moorhead Center does fairly well there, but the weather in January and February really took a crucial hit on that, and there were some psychiatrists that only saw 2 clients all day because of cancellation, because people couldn't make it in. So for the first time since I've been on that board, their adjusted margins for the year are under 3%, and so I feel like we have a pretty good path forward in terms of addressing that and dealing with that. Yesterday I attended the meeting with Governor Walz, and I appreciate both the emergency manager from Moorhead, but also Gabe for his work on that. I feel like we have a pretty good path forward in dealing with that. And I was at Shields getting track shoes for my kid, and overheard a conversation where there were a couple people that were in just utter panic that we were going to have a 42-foot flood, and it's going to be worse than 2009 and 2011. And while if the weather changes, we could be seeing something drastic, I really want to reiterate to the public the reason we're doing these proclamations and declaring is really to help get services more readily available for people. Yes, we will probably see some sort of flooding, but Clay County is in a substantially different position than we were 10 years ago, so that. And then last night, I also attended the Buffalo Red Watershed meeting, as we've covered in a variety of different issues. I appreciate the fact that they're collaborating flood preparations for rural Clay County pieces. They discussed the JD1 ditch bond that we had heard at this meeting before, and as Rita had said, they in terms of the contested hearing, decided not to take action on that. The permit hearing for the diversion authority will be April 9th at 7 o'clock at Horizon Middle School in Moorhead. So that's a big issue, a big event that people can go to and observe and speak if they feel necessary. And then this morning we had the PIC committee where we discussed the wage study, and we also had a proposal on a usage policy for the Law Enforcement Center from Sheriff Epstein and Lieutenant Lansing. So I think that concludes my reports.
Thank you, Commissioner Campbell.
All right, on the 19th, after our board meeting, I went to, actually I left early because I went to Fergus Falls for the Lakes Country. I'm on the facilities committee meeting there, and we looked at a building at the old armory in Fergus Falls that they're looking at purchasing for the level 4 type students for that area. They figure that that can grow into a facility that can handle 50 of those kids. So we gave a first review of that facility, and it appears to meet the needs, so we're going to continue to move forward with that. On Wednesday evening, I went to Horace, North Dakota, to attend the Stanley Township. It was their annual meeting, and there was a presentation on the diversion in the lands, and then of course they did a pretty thorough discussion regarding flood preparations for that area. On Thursday, it was quite a busy day. In the morning, we had the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development Authority, and there's right now there's a big push to go out and recruit more private sector businesses to join in that membership. And I think they've got Joe's doing a really good job in redefining the mission of the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development and bringing more people in to assist, when we start talking about the issue of job shortages in this area. It's critical that we address some of those concerns, and I think Joe's doing a great job. Later that morning, we met with Solid Waste, and we went over some alternatives for a gas collection system at the landfill. That's part of the new landfill expansion. That we're going to be they're going to be presenting that Thursday morning to SWAC, and then we'll report back to the findings of that to this board. Friday morning, I went to Perham for the Prairie Lakes budget meeting, and that went well. We looked at some different opportunities there. They were talking about a eddy system for that can take out more recyclable materials out of the fines. But there's been a proposal that somebody says we could get so many dollars a year out of it, and we're suggesting, well, if you can get that much out, why don't you invest in the equipment there, and we'll share in the profits with you. And so we're going to see where that goes. But the overall operation there is going very, very well. It's really improved. Then yesterday we met to discuss diversion issues again. We have every Monday morning a 10:30 meeting, and there's talking about the litigation, the mitigation, whether it's with Comstock or whether it's with Horace or Wolverton or Eagle Township. There's a lot of things that got in the works trying to deal with these different communities to assist them in mitigation. Then I also attended the governor's deal here yesterday afternoon. And then right after that, I dropped in on the plastic bag task force to see how they were doing there, and gave them a few suggestions in terms of right now in all these stores that offer you to bring in plastic bags, nobody knows where they are, and they're not recognizable. And I keep telling them, you got to have a uniform, standard-looking deal that when people see it, they're going to recognize it as a place, this is where I put my bags, my plastic bags for recycling. And so I reiterated that message to them, and we'll see where that goes. Last night I attended the Buffalo Red River Watershed meeting, and gave them a little bit of update on where we are with the draft of the JPA thing that would exist for land acquisitions between Moorhead and Clay County. We're probably looking at that draft coming out in the next 2 weeks, and then hopefully we'll go to each agency for consideration. That's all I have.
Right.
No, last Wednesday I went to the Historical Society, talking about the new displays that they're going to have and stuff like that. A lot of that is published in the Fargo Forum and stuff. You can find out about that. We're looking at doing a complete itemizing all the things that they have there. They're looking at about 15,000 items they have there, so they're cataloging all that stuff. So that's pretty much the main project they got going on now. And met with the manager there, and we went over budget a little bit and stuff like that, with what to look at, you know. I know they've always been looking at each year, I think they've been going for 1% and 1%, and we've been improving that, you know. Should they look at going further than that, you know, but had a discussion on that. Later that Wednesday evening, I went to that highway department, the 5-year plan, which had already been discussed pretty much. It was almost a 2-hour meeting there where we talked about the highway plan and stuff like that. So it was a good meeting there with the people who had, you know, most of their, like I said before the meeting, most of them, their plans are on there. So yesterday, yes, I was with over the Governor Wallace's presentation there, and then after that meeting, Commissioner Haney and I had a meeting with the census thing, and I think we really they had a presentation on, do we want to get involved? Do we want to have a committee on census? Because it's very important that we get everybody counted, and we got to get out there and get that message out there that everybody needs to be counted. So do we want a census committee? You know, so Moorhead's already established a census committee. Do we want to establish another one? Do we want to go in with Moorhead? Do we want to make that a part of somebody's committee assignments, the census thing? And so I think that's a decision we have to make here at the board, you know, if we're going to keep attending these meetings. Another thing out of that, they're looking at hiring a lot of employees. I think they want 50 to hire right now, and they're looking at about 400 next year. So, I mean, if we're looking at some employment opportunities, I mean, they're not going to be 5-10-year employment opportunities. They're going to be 6-7 months, something like that, in that area. So we got to get that message out. If someone's looking for some employment opportunities in the next year with the Census Bureau, there's going to be a lot of opportunities, you know. Granted, if you have a regular job, it's going to be probably tough, but you can go out there and do some of that work during the day and some of them at night too. So it's going to be some opportunities for people in Clay County. And just to let you know, if you are an elected official, you can't be employed by the Census Bureau. So in case you're looking for some more work, you know. But
what kind of time frame are they on?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. When did they start?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the first hirings of the 50 they're looking at here within the next month. So
they're going to start the actual count now, or
just some of the work will start here.
When do they actually start the count?
April 1st of next year. Yep.
Oh, not till okay.
April through August, I think, something like that.
Oh, okay.
And I know the last time, 10 years ago or 8 years ago now, I worked for them at that time, and we did it during the winter time, and it was not a good time to do it.
I think that's a good thing to put on our agenda for the small cities meeting too, to bring that up. And maybe if you want, you know, if you're looking at, based on your communications yesterday of forming a committee, you know, maybe the two of you could head that up for us, and then maybe look at some. Well,
I guess we got to decide whether we want a committee or not. You know, I mean, do we want to duplicate probably what Moorhead is doing already, or get on their committee, or I don't know. You know, that's a decision we have to make. You know, if we're going to do it as a committee, get it on our assignments, I'm willing to serve in that. So.
Well, but that's why I think, you know, you've said Moorhead's done it, but what about all of our other smaller cities?
Oh,
you know, so maybe they want to join together in a committee with the county to do it. Maybe that's why I throw that out there. We have our small cities meeting coming up soon.
So are you two willing to do
I
that?
think you two would be perfect for that.
Well, okay, so
I make a motion to create a committee to look at the census requirements that we may need, and Frank and Jim can serve on that capacity, and if it comes up.
Are there members as Steve determines that are necessary? So, okay, with per diem?
Yes.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for a new committee. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, that was my meeting, thank you.
Jim?
Okay. On Tuesday, I attended the public meeting, the MetroCog public meeting about the 12th Avenue South improvements, and heard all about that. And that goes from Rivershore Drive to Old 52. And on Thursday, I attended the Board of Trustees meeting for the Lake Agassiz Regional Library meeting, and we received the audit report from Ide Bailey. Everything was good, on the up and up. And then we heard the report from Director Les Lynch regarding the legislative activities and lobbying at the legislature. And on Monday, I attended the governor's briefing, or the flood briefing yesterday, update at the LAC, and then after that, I attended the census meeting with Commissioner Gross. That's my reports.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, one more item on the census thing. I think there's a job fair at the Morris Center Mall going up this morning from 10 to 12. So I think the Census Bureau is going to be there, that I heard that they'll probably be there. So if someone's interested in that, you can go there and find out something.
Okay.
I just wanted to add, I did also, I think it was last Wednesday, I attended the Moorhead's presentation on the Center Avenue corridor that was held at the Moorhead Center Mall. I went there and
it was Thursday.
Or was it Thursday? Yeah, Wednesday or Thursday. So I went and I reviewed. They didn't really have a presentation when I was there, but they had a lot of different boards that showed what their plans are. So.
Okay, then I had Greater Fargo Ward EDC last week. Kevin already reported on that, and we did have a diversion meeting with the John Shockley, the diversion attorney, about some JPA issues that we wanted to discuss with Steve and Kevin and I. So, and then I was busy the end of the week, which is apparently obvious to everybody at this point. So Steve, what do you got?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A series of meetings last week with Gabe Tweeten, Sheriff Empting, and Chief Deputy Lansom in regard to flood planning. Throughout the week, I also participated in a number of diversion-related meetings. On Wednesday, we also had our central admin meeting. We discussed beginning of insurance planning, some capital improvement issues on campus, hiring employees, and space concerns that some of our departments are experiencing. That night I participated also with Commissioner Gross at the Highway Department 5-year plan public input meeting. Thursday I was at the SWAC meeting. That's been addressed. I also participated in a phone conference with Joe Kelly in preparation of the governor's visit this week. On Friday we met with the Planning and Zoning Department and just to go going through how things are going there. Yesterday participated in new employee orientation, environmental services discussion. Also participated in the governor's visit, and lastly the census meeting. And I also participated in the PIC meeting. Just to let you know that the DNR will be here tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 2, providing their hydrology report, the geology report that they came and spoke on earlier here to the board. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Tony, you have anything for us?
Other than that, I'll be at the Board of Adjustment meeting and the Planning Commission meeting tonight, but other than that, no.
Thank you.
I believe we have a planning commission,
Yeah.
right?
No, I don't believe there's either.
Yeah.
No, we got the night off then.
Oh, they're not on tonight?
No, there were no items that were brought forward for this.
Oh, no, I was just like, yeah. Okay.
Wayne, anything else for us? No? Hearing none, we're adjourned.